Good evening. I'm Ken Schulman, President of the Board of Directors of Boston George Film, and it is my distinct pleasure now to invite to the stage Producer Jeanine Thomas, writer Finn Taylor, and one of the stars of the film, Luke Blumm. Before we begin the serious interview, I play a game with my wife, which is called Where Have I Seen You Before? The actor who played the elder Herbert. Avatar?
Avatar, he's the lead in the Don't Breathe series. Tombstone, he was the head of the Actors Studio in New York. He's a heralded stage actor. Also Stephen Lang, he's the son of Elliot Lang.
Okay, great. The Jewish story begins with the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and the first book of the 5 books is Bereshit, Genesis, and I'd love to begin our story here. What is the genesis, Jeanine, of this film? How did it start?
Hello? I met Herbert in 2014, and he had just started talking about his story, and I had a lot of questions for him, and he loved talking to somebody. So I spent a lot of time with him for about 1.5 years, and then really decided this needed to be a film. And and then until now, this has been happening.
I've asked that question to many producers, many directors, but before this you weren't a producer or a director. What made you think that you could make a film?
I don't know. Actually, I had a friend who was in the film industry down in LA, and when I decided to make a film, so I'm like, nobody reads books anymore, so it needs to be a film. And the world needs to know about this and the girl storyline, and you know, we have to heal the past and the present. And so I went down to visit him and talk about it, and then on my flight back to San Francisco, I asked myself, I'm like, who am I at my age to think I can make a film? And I actually, long story, sorry guys, I shelved it. I said, you know what, I was in the internet industry at the time, and I said, I'm gonna just put this, you know, in a corner for now, and if it's meant to be, the universe will bring it back around to me. And about 1 year later, I met he was a documentary producer, and I was doing an internet job, and the person I was working for said, oh, tell him your story about this film. And I did, and he actually contacted me and said, I want to help you make this film. So I said, okay, the universe is bringing it back around, let's go. And I figured it out. And I had some great help along the way.
Well, if we're crediting the universe, how did the universe put you together with Finn?
So it was actually this consultant who, he knew the industry really well, and I'm like, I had an idea for a story, don't want to learn how to write a script. So we found one writer, that one didn't pan out, and I'm like, no, this is not the writer. And we got turned on to Finn, secondarily, and he just got it right away. And I said, yes, you know, and he's been wonderful and, you know, amazing, and so good to work with.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Finn, you've done myriad films. Many of them are comedies.
Yeah.
This is not a comedy. What, to anyone's surprise,
Yeah.
what seized you about this story, and what made you think that you wanted to tell it?
Well, you know, when I write, some of my comedies were dark comedies. The first script I sold was more of a comedic drama, I guess, but really as a writer, I don't see as much separation as one thinks. I knew, my uncle was the head prosecutor of the Nuremberg trial, so I knew of it. But in meeting her, what was interesting was an idea of somebody who had kept a secret for that long, which I found and have learned is extremely common among survivors. It's not rare. And that, seeing the effect he had, I went to many talks of him speaking to children, how he turned his trauma into a service. And I thought that was incredibly moving, and that it was Jeanine's idea to include the story of one of the kids along with him, and that made it unique and interesting, and it made it a living example of the healing. So to me, that was very compelling.
Was it exciting during the process to be working with someone who was new to the profession and new to the art?
Well, sure, but you want someone who was excited by the newness of it, but with the strength to persevere, to have a particular vision is important, and a good vision. And you know, Herbert was a rare individual. We debated about whether to have the clip of him at the end or not, because Stephen Lang does such a great job. By the way, his family loves the film. That was our scariest screening, and they were shocked by how well Stephen in other movies plays macho, scary, muscular guys. So we had to do, you know, but he's a great stage actor, so we had to do a lot to tone it down. But we wanted to show the clip of Herbert to get a sense of the grace with which he opened these kids up, you know, his generosity, his grace, you know.
Luke Blumm, you were how old when you made this film?
I've been very thirsty all day today. I was 12 years old when I made this.
At 12 years old, what did you know about the history of the Holocaust and the Shoah?
I mean, just public schools are not good at all at teaching this kind of stuff. That's part of the reason why I think this movie's so important. I just knew, like, kind of what it was. I just knew that it was a bad thing and a bunch of Jewish people died. And that was about the extent of it, which is, I mean, it's terrible.
I once met a German actor who played a concentration camp capo in a film, and he was so struck by his role that he was unable to speak German for 6 days. It had that much of an effect on him, and he knew the story. Did you suffer learning the things that you learned while making this film?
I mean, yeah, just like a human being, just learning about all these horrible things that other human beings have done. It just kind of makes me feel dirty about myself and just humanity as a whole, which is, I just can't believe that atrocities like that could possibly exist. I mean, if you could think of the worst thing possible before this had happened, I guarantee no one would have ever been able to think of something as terrible as this. It's a lot.
And how difficult was it to learn to speak German?
So I had an accent coach. She was incredible. She helped me with the accent at first, and then through the whole rest of the shooting, after I got the accent down, it was all just constant practice of the German scenes. I didn't learn any actual German. I just kept repeating those things over and over again.
Jeanine, is the story of Abby based on a true story?
So we actually created Abby as an amalgamation. Herbert spoke to thousands of children in schools, and one of the things they did, each of the children wrote to him after. So I have all the letters from these thousands of kids and have read all of those letters. So it's kind of an amalgamation of what came out in those stories as well as what is happening in the world today. So suicide is the second leading cause of death for teens, and it's been just ticking upward in a scary way. Yeah, and so we thought it was really important to create a teenage storyline, and hopefully, you know, once this gets into schools and, you know, when we release this, it's a movie that teens and young adults can watch and want to watch rather than be forced to watch.
Also, can I add one little thing that Herbert told me, and you know this too, the very first time he spoke, a girl came up to him, a teen girl. She'd already written her suicide note to her parents, and then she heard his story and it turned her around. So that was kind of the end for, you know, one of the parts of her.
Was Herbert as solar, as sunny, as we see him here?
Yes, and that is also one thing that really captured me when I spent a lot of time with Herbert. I had a grandfather who was a prisoner of war, and he came out, and he was a beautiful, to talk to his sister, beautiful, sweet soul prior to going into World War II. And he was in a camp in Stalico in Austria, and when he came back, when he was triggered, he was horrible and angry, and took it out on my mom and her siblings and his wife for his entire life until he passed. And Herbert was the complete opposite. And Stephen captured it really well.
I'd love to open this up to the audience for questions. Please come, just raise your hand. We're having difficulty seeing because there's a lot of light, so please be patient. Yes, up there.
Hi, the film was beautiful. Thank you all for contributing your efforts to it. I was just wondering how, Herbert kept this secret from his family for so long. How did his family react after 60, 65 years? Whatever, maybe he didn't hand them the interview, but then he finally told them. How did they respond to that?
He did hand them the interview, that's how he told them. He simply handed them a copy of the interview. One daughter, he had identical twin daughters and a third daughter. One daughter watched it, the other didn't, but they learned about it. And I interviewed the family extensively too. And I asked his daughters, why do you think he waited so long to tell you? And they're like, we don't know, will you ask him for us? And they said they felt guilty. They're about my age, the twin sisters. He gave them such a beautiful childhood. They'd wait on the steps of their house for him to come home from work. And he was triggered, even to the end, to a degree. But what you can see, what's beautiful is, if you look at the first interview he did, you can see it online, he looks like a terrified man in front of a shooting squad. And then you could see him later on, after sharing his story for many years, he was much more luminescent and a great weight had been lifted. But even near the end when we were interviewing, there's still things that would trigger him, like the boots.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Since Abby was an amalgamation, in the movie it looked like she was kind of the catalyst that helped him open up. So what actually did help him open up?
Did everyone hear the question? The question is, since Abby was an amalgam of several people or many teenagers that Herbert influenced, and in the film, it's Abby that gets Herbert to open up in real life, in Herbert's real story. What prompted him to open up?
Yeah, he was actually, he went to the hospital, or he went to see his doctor, and his doctor did say, this is bad, you've got to get your affairs in order. And he decided at that point he should tell his story. He did not tell his story to a teenage person. He had gotten a letter from the Shoah Foundation and years prior, and he just stuck it in a drawer somewhere. And when he found out the information that he could be close to the end, he decided it was time to tell his story. And he contacted the Shoah Foundation. They were no longer taking information, but they pointed him to someone in Berkeley, California. So he went there and did it a one-day shoot and got a video or a DVD at the time and went and handed it to his daughters and said, you might want to watch this at some point.
He met his wife in Brooklyn after the war, and I kind of love this. The way she was living in Brooklyn, he was living in San Francisco. The way he proposes, he sent a ring in the mail. Love chocolate too, we give it to you at the drop of the hat.
Yes, please, in the front.
This is Director Dan Mann. You were 12 years old when you filmed this film, and many of the scenes that you were in are very traumatic and even difficult to watch as a member of an audience. How was it for you, and what was the impact on you of being in a scene where dead bodies coming down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
The question is directed to Luke, and the questioner observes that this is a film that's difficult to watch, and the questioner would like to know from Luke, what was it like for him to observe these scenes as an actor, to see some of the things that we've seen on the screen?
So, just being there in the moment was incredibly fun. I just love filming movies, so actually filming there was amazing. I loved it. But to have a more satisfying answer to your question than that,
Can I throw in something? I want you to answer fully, but his dad and mom were there the whole time, and the actors, the 4 actors playing the family, really did become a family. And we tried, whenever possible with film, you don't always have to expose the actor to the worst possible thing. And in fact, I always wanted to make it as unbloody as possible, but Jeanine flew me to Auschwitz while I was writing it, and I realized if I don't tell some of these moments, then I'm perpetuating lies and a myth. But anyway, he was incredible. Now I keep answering, sorry.
yeah, hold on, I just gotta remember what it was.
Was it traumatic?
Yeah, so it was very traumatic while I was like learning about it, was when that trauma kind of set in, and it also set in more watching it after the fact, because in the moment I'm just having fun on set, but learning about the Holocaust and learning about Herbert more specifically, like you said earlier, he started off when he was telling his story, like he was incredibly scared to tell it, and I watched that interview, his first interview, and just learning about everything that happened was traumatic for me. And then afterward, watching it, I cried every single time I've watched this movie. It's so sad. It's so sad. And then since you mentioned my parents being there, my dad was the mailman in this movie.
And can I say one other thing? From the postmaster, that scene, so the chubby-faced little boy playing soccer was, and then the grown thin man burning the number off his arms, that was all shot within 3 weeks. And he transformed physically so much, it was crazy. And it's the acting, I gotta say.
The other thing I'd love to just throw in too, when we were at Auschwitz shooting, and one of the scenes was particularly difficult to shoot, and he's just amazing, and every time he would shoot, he would come back and run over to Finn and be like, how was I? How did I do? He's just such a professional. And he talked to Finn for a bit, and then he was going off and skipping around and playing soccer, and I just went up to him and I said, how do you do that? How do you do such a difficult, scene and then go do this? He's like, I don't know. But I think it speaks to his character, and it speaks to his longevity as an actor, that he's able to do really hard stuff and let it flow through him, and not crumble him. So he was amazing.
Here to the right.
I have another question for Mr. Blumm. So the physical transformation with film, is that actual physical, or was it makeup or lighting? Was that you changed, or is it?
The physical transformation of Luke in the film, is that an actual physical transformation, or was it done with makeup and lighting?
So it's definitely a mix of both. A lot of it is lighting and makeup that adds so much. But I was running, throughout the whole summer that I filmed it, I started running a couple months before filming. And I think I was probably 90 pounds beforehand, and then a couple months after I shot up to 120 pounds. So I had lost, I mean, that was obviously a growth spurt, but I had lost a lot of weight, and I was not eating that much either. So it was a lot of physical, a lot of makeup. It was a mix of things.
Yes, please.
So Luke again. Have you been an actor before this role, and if so, what have you done by 12?
Has Luke been an actor before this role, and what had he done up to the age of 12?
So, yeah, I had been an actor before this. I started acting when I was 8 years old because my dad, again, I'm mentioning him a lot. he still is an incredible actor. He's amazing. I love him so much. And he was doing acting lessons when I was a kid in the house. So I just always grew up around acting, and when I eventually was like, hey Dad, I really want to be an actor. No, I was a higher pitch voice. I was like, hey Dad, I really want to be an actor. And eventually he did let me. I was auditioning nonstop for about a year until I got my first job, which was The Walking Dead, little one-episode thing. And I think my favorite thing that I've done before, like the age of 12, before this, was a movie that I did called Sun. It's a horror movie. And then I was also on The King of Staten Island, and a couple other things. But most of what this and the movie I filmed right after this, Lost on a Mountain in Maine, those two are my biggest things that I love the most.
Luke is the lead in Lost on a Mountain in Maine. It's out now.
Well, based on what we've seen tonight, we can expect many, many great things from you, and it's our privilege to have you tonight. I'd like to close, speaking of many, many great things. Jeanine, you mentioned that there are plans for this film beyond just the Jewish Film Festival circuit. What would be your greatest hope for this film? How can it do it the most good?
For the world to see it. So we're hoping to have a release date in mid 2025 with the US in theaters and in the world, and then it will go on streaming. And then my hope too is to work with schools and colleges around the world to continue having people watch the film, talking about it prior, after, talking about it with history teachers, psychology teachers, to get out, not just paying homage to the past, but really talking about trauma and the importance of healing it so we can go forward.
And if you loved the film, please go on IMDb and vote on it. It's free. And if you didn't love it, please forget what I just said.
I like one thing that I also like to mention, just a little fun thing. That chocolate that I ate in the movie is the most delicious chocolate in the world. It's incredible. It's very bitter and sour at first, but then once you get used to it, it's amazing. I love it.
Jeanine and Luke, thank you so much. And the audience, you've been wonderful. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you throughout the festival. Thank you and good night.